The courtroom didn't feel like a room anymore. It felt like a storm, air thick, heavy, charged with something no one could name but everyone could feel. The marble floor gleamed beneath fluorescent lights, the flag hung silently in the corner, and that sacred wooden bench, where justice was supposed to stand untouchable, suddenly felt fragile. Judge Hamilton adjusted his glasses, his stern presence cracking for the first time. He was known as a man of order, a man who didn't flinch, didn't soften, didn't entertain theatrics. But even he wasn't ready for the sight of the small child seated before him. 3 years old, brown curls, pink shoes, a stuffed bunny with one ear sewn back on resting in her lap. Her name was Lily Carter. She swung her small legs nervously, not understanding the weight of the silence pressing down on grown adults, not understanding the cameras, the reporters, the row of uniforms lining the back wall. She only understood that this place was too loud, too bright, too full of eyes. And one of those sets of eyes belonged to a German shepherd, whose badge glinted beneath the courtroom lights. Rex. He lay at first, body tense but controlled, beside his handler's chair. On any normal day, Rex was a symbol of pride, bravery wrapped in fur. He stood beside presidents, marched in parades, and rested at hospital bedsides with children he comforted. There was a plaque in the precinct lobby with his name. There were newspaper clippings, photos of him wearing medals, smiling kids hugging his neck. He was a hero in the city. And today, that hero was watching the smallest witness the courtroom had ever seen. Across the room, at the defense table, sat Detective Marcus Hale. Silver hair at his temples, stiff jaw, uniform crisp as if it had been ironed by authority itself. He had the posture of a war general, a man who'd built a reputation out of courage, who had been the face of triumphant press conferences, the smiling officer shaking hands with mayors and grieving mothers. But there was something different now. He didn't look brave. He looked afraid. Not of prison, not of losing his career, not even of public humiliation. He looked afraid of the child. The prosecutor stepped forward gently. Her tone wasn't aggressive. It wasn't sharp. It was soft, careful, like someone trying to speak to a frightened bird without startling it. "Hi, Lily," she said softly. "Do you remember me?" The little girl nodded, pressing her cheek against her stuffed bunny. "You did such a brave job talking to me before," the prosecutor continued. "Do you think you can be brave again today?" Lily's eyes flickered up. She scanned the people staring. Then the sound startled her. A loud cough. A chair scrape. Laughter from someone whispering too close. Her hands tightened around the bunny. Her bottom lip quivered. Her mother, sitting just a few feet away, whispered, "I'm right here, baby. Mommy's right here." Lily took a shaky breath. Judge Hamilton leaned forward, his voice lowered, losing its courtroom steel. "Miss Lily," he said softly, "no one here is going to rush you. You're safe. We'll take this slow." Safe. The word hung there. Safe, in the same room as the man accused of twisting evidence. Safe in the same room as strangers. Safe in the same room as the dog whose presence suddenly meant something different than comfort. No one expected too much from her testimony. That was the truth. She was supposed to be symbolic, a reminder of innocence, a human detail the jury would empathize with, a sweet, she won't remember much witness. But she did remember. And the first sign of that came when she finally lifted her head fully, and her eyes found Rex. Not just a look. Recognition. The kind that sinks into a child's chest and doesn't loosen its grip. Rex's ears moved first, twitching forward. His gaze locked onto hers. His body stilled in a way only a service animal's training could create. But beneath that discipline, something uneasy rippled. Lily swallowed. Her finger, tiny, trembling, slowly lifted. The prosecutor followed the direction. So did every juror. So did every officer. So did every reporter, who began quietly scribbling with renewed intensity. She wasn't pointing at the detective. She wasn't pointing at anyone human at all. She was pointing at the K9. That one, she whispered, voice barely more than air. The room broke into a wave of murmurs instantly. People leaned in, people whispered, people stared. The handler stiffened. Detective Hale's eyes shot to Rex. Judge Hamilton's gavel slammed once. Order. But his voice didn't carry the same confidence anymore. The prosecutor hesitated. Lily, do you know that dog? Lily nodded slowly. The handler shifted his grip on the leash. Rex did not look away from the child. Can you tell us how? The prosecutor gently urged. The courtroom leaned forward collectively, like the world was holding one giant breath. Lily's little chest moved as if breathing suddenly hurt. Her tiny lashes fluttered. Her voice broke into a whisper. He was there that night. It was like someone unplugged the building. The silence was brutal. Her mother broke into tears almost instantly, covering her mouth. The jurors stiffened, every single one suddenly wide awake with dread. Rex's handler opened his mouth, but his voice never came. Detective Hale leaned forward just a fraction. The prosecutor took a slow step closer. Her throat tightened. She hadn't expected this. No one had. Lily, she whispered, now shaking herself, are you sure? The little girl nodded harder this time. The judge didn't blink. Reporters' pens scratched in frantic fury. The air shifted. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Heavy. Real. Lily's small shoulders rose as if the memory crawled over her skin. I remember him, she whispered. He was looking at me. A sound escaped someone's throat, a stifled gasp. The handler tightened his grip again. Rex's muscles tensed, his breathing changed, his posture changed. This wasn't aggression, this wasn't confusion. This was familiarity. And there was something else in his eyes. Guilt, or something worse. The prosecutor swallowed. And what happened when he was there, Lily? She asked gently, bracing the entire direction of the case on the trembling honesty of a child who had seen far too much. Lily didn't answer right away. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't freeze. She did something far worse. She whispered with a voice too small for the truth it carried. He didn't help us. The words sliced the courtroom open. A ripple of disbelief exploded instantly. The handler stood halfway up. That's not judge, this is. Sit, the judge snapped, but even he sounded shaken. Detective Hale's knuckles turned white against the defense table. The mother sobbed harder. Rex didn't move. Didn't sit. Didn't lie down. Didn't look away. He only watched the child as if the past had come back to haunt him. The prosecutor couldn't breathe for a moment. This wasn't testimony. This was a bomb. She took another step. Lily, she whispered, terrified of the answer even as she asked, what do you mean he didn't help? Lily's eyes filled with tears finally. Her small chest trembled. Her hand pressed tighter around the bunny. He knew, she choked softly. Knew what? The prosecutor asked, voice breaking. The girl lifted her hand again. This time it did not shake. This time it pointed with certainty. Straight across the courtroom. Straight to the defense table. Straight at Detective Marcus Hale. And in the moment her finger leveled, Rex stood. Not commanded. Not called. He rose slowly. Intentionally. Eyes locked on the same man. The handler yanked his leash instinctively. Rex resisted. That was the moment everyone understood. This wasn't a child's confusion. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't courtroom drama anymore. It was truth dragging itself into the light. Judge Hamilton's voice broke for the first time. "Everyone, remain where you are." But it didn't matter, because now the room wasn't just filled with tension. It was filled with fear. And the question no one wanted to ask echoed silently. If the city's most trusted hero dog wasn't just a rescuer that night, then what was he? And who had he really been following? The answer was coming. And no one in that courtroom was ready for it. The room had transformed. What had been a courtroom, a place of procedure, routine, and predictable decorum, was now a stage for a story no one could control. Every eye was fixed on the child and the dog. Lily's small finger remained unwavering as she pointed at Rex, the German shepherd who had been hailed as a hero, a living emblem of courage. Rex's handler, Officer Frank Donnelly, had spent years training him. They were a team, inseparable. Frank prided himself on the precision of Rex's obedience, the exactitude of his reactions, the unshakable loyalty he displayed. No matter the chaos, Rex responded with controlled focus. But today, Frank was sweating, and for the first time in his career, he didn't know what to do. Detective Marcus Hale's face drained of color. Publicly, he had always been the celebrated rescuer. Medals, ribbons, photo ops. He had built his career on being the face of heroism during the city's most high-profile kidnapping case. But that case had only been a public story. Behind the scenes, Marcus had carefully scripted every moment, every rescue, every miracle moment Rex was credited for. And now, a 3-year-old and a dog had the power to undo everything. The courtroom held its breath. The prosecutor, Dana Mitchell, straightened in her heels. She was young, ambitious, and had a reputation for calm in chaos, but her throat was tight now. She tried to remember her training, witness control, gentle questioning, establishing the chain of events. But she realized quickly this wasn't standard witness testimony. This was raw memory, raw emotion, and raw truth. "Lily," Dana said softly, kneeling just a few feet from her, "can you tell us what happened that night?" Lily swallowed and clutched her bunny tighter. Her voice was small, fragile, but carried something that pierced the silence of the room. "He was there," she whispered. She didn't blink. She didn't look away. She looked at Rex as though she were telling him a secret only they shared. The big dog. Everyone's gaze darted to the German shepherd. Rex's ears twitched, and his tail stiffened slightly, the subtle signal of tension that only seasoned officers could recognize. He was alert, focused, watching the child as though the memory of that night had been stored somewhere deep in his mind. Frank's grip on the leash tightened, but the K9 did not respond. His training demanded obedience, yet today he disobeyed instinctively. Something in that tiny girl's voice, in her memories, had triggered something buried. "What do you mean?" Dana prompted, her voice gentle but urgent. "What happened?" Lily's lip quivered. She hesitated, eyes flicking briefly to her mother, who whispered encouragement. Then, with a sudden clarity no 3-year-old should possess, she began to speak. "They took me," she said. Her small voice carried through the courtroom like a stone dropped in still water. "The dark place. I was scared. They said I couldn't scream." Gasps erupted in the room. The jury leaned forward. Reporters scribbled frantically. Everyone, even Judge Hamilton, felt the room constrict around them. And Lily paused, a shudder running through her tiny frame. The dog, he came, but he didn't help. It was a statement that hit harder than any testimony from an adult. The courtroom collectively froze. People exchanged incredulous glances. Could a child really be saying what they thought impossible? Could Rex, the hero dog, really have been part of something more sinister? Frank swallowed hard. His hands shook slightly. He had trained Rex to never fail, to never misinterpret a command. Every nerve in his body screamed that he needed to intervene, but something about the way the child spoke, the untainted clarity of her memory, made him hesitate. Detective Hale leaned back slightly, trying to maintain composure, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of the table. The heroic narrative he had spent months crafting was unraveling in real time, exposed by the voice of a child and the silent acknowledgement of a dog. Dana Mitchell stepped closer, her voice now a whisper for the entire courtroom to hear. "Lily, do you know who gave Rex the orders that night?" The girl hesitated, as if the memory was too heavy to carry aloud. Then, slowly, deliberately, she pointed, not at the handler, not at the kidnappers, but directly at Detective Hale. The reaction was instantaneous. Rex's body tensed further. The dog rose, his muscles coiled, eyes locked on the man. This was no obedience. This was recognition. Gasps, murmurs, and whispers spread through the courtroom like wildfire. The jury, the reporters, even the judge himself were stunned into silence. Frank Donnelly's voice cracked. "Rex, sit," he commanded sharply, yanking the leash. But Rex did not obey. He stood firm, refusing to move away from the detective, as if his memory of that night refused to be overridden by years of training. Judge Hamilton slammed his gavel, "Order in the courtroom." But the command barely carried over the tension. The courtroom was no longer a place of simple procedure. It had become a battlefield of truth versus deception, and every soul inside felt the weight of what was about to be revealed. Detective Hale's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Sweat ran down his temple. He was trained to face criminals, to face threats, to control situations. But not this. Not a child accusing him and a dog confirming it in the silent language of instinct. Dana Mitchell, sensing the shift, moved slowly to stand beside the child. She spoke gently, carefully, her eyes never leaving the girl. "Lily, what did Rex do that night?" Lily's small frame trembled. He followed the man, the bad man. The courtroom collectively drew a breath as the words settled like ice. Not a lie, not confusion, not imagination. The hero dog Rex had followed the wrong person. Frank tightened his jaw. He had trained Rex for years, and he knew this meant the dog remembered, recognized, and confirmed an unsettling truth. The mother gasped audibly. Tears ran down her cheeks as she held her own hands together, unable to speak. Her daughter was recalling something no 3-year-old should have witnessed, and the truth was more horrifying than she had imagined. Detective Hale's face paled. His confident facade, the one built over years of media appearances, awards, and public admiration, cracked entirely. Fear seeped into his posture, and for the first time the courtroom didn't see a hero. They saw a man whose secrets were about to be dragged into the light. The jury leaned forward. Their pens hovered over notepads. Every mind in that room, from the defense attorney to the bailiffs, felt the weight of the story unfolding. Then Lily did something unexpected. She took a step closer to Rex. She reached out, her tiny hand trembling, and touched his fur. Rex leaned into her touch, his eyes still locked on Detective Hale, a silent witness that could not lie. Dana Mitchell, her voice barely above a whisper, asked, "Lily, did Rex try to help you?" The girl shook her head, a tear sliding down her cheek. "No, he listened to him. The bad man, he didn't help us. He just watched." The courtroom erupted. Murmurs, whispers, stifled gasps. The hero narrative everyone had believed, the story of bravery, medals, and rescue, was crumbling. And the room was only beginning to feel the full force of what Lily was revealing. Judge Hamilton leaned forward in his chair, his gavel raised, but his face betrayed his own shock. "Everyone remain seated," he commanded, but even he knew this was beyond routine control. Frank Donnelly looked down at Rex, eyes wide. Years of training couldn't erase what had happened that night. The dog remembered. The dog had chosen loyalty, not to him, not to the police, not to the city, but to truth. And the truth was pointing straight at Detective Marcus Hale. The entire courtroom understood in that suspended heartbeat that the hero story they'd all believed was a lie. The little girl had spoken it, the dog had confirmed it, and the city's most celebrated detective was suddenly at the center of a storm he could no longer control. Silence fell, heavy and unbearable. Then Lily, holding her stuffed bunny, whispered one final word for that part of the story. He lied. And just like that, the courtroom was no longer a room of order. It was a crucible of truth, waiting to ignite. The words "he lied" hung in the courtroom like smoke from a fire that had just been lit, thin, wispy, but choking everyone in its path. Every eye was on Lily, then shifted to Rex, then back to Detective Marcus Hale. The hero of headlines, of city parades, of medal ceremonies, now sat frozen, a man trapped in the spotlight of a 3-year-old's memory. 2 months earlier, the world believed it had witnessed a miracle. The city had cheered when news broke that a little girl and her mother had been rescued from a remote barn on the outskirts of town. Headlines had read, "Brave K9 leads police to kidnap girl, saves the day." Photos of Marcus shaking hands with reporters, kneeling beside Lily, were plastered across social media. Everyone praised the detective. Everyone praised Rex. Everyone believed the story. But Lily remembered differently. The courtroom held its collective breath as Dana Mitchell knelt beside the tiny witness. "Lily," she said softly, "can you tell us what really happened that night?" Lily's small hands tightened around her stuffed bunny. Her eyes widened, reflecting a memory too large for her age. "The dark place," she whispered. "The scary man, he was tall, he had boots that went clomp, clomp, clomp." She shivered and pressed her tiny face into the bunny. "He said I couldn't scream. He said he'd hurt Mommy." A stifled gasp rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Hamilton's eyebrows shot upward. The jury leaned forward instinctively. Reporters' pens scratched in frantic anticipation, capturing every word. "And Rex," Dana asked gently, "what was the dog doing?" Lily looked at him, her eyes wide with recognition and fear. "He came, but he didn't help us. He just followed the man." Silence slammed into the room like a gavel hitting wood. Frank Donnelly's grip on Rex's leash tightened until his knuckles turned white. He had trained the dog for years. Rex never, ever disobeyed when lives were at stake. And yet, here he was, still standing, still tense, still staring at Detective Hale. The detective leaned forward slightly, voice tight. "Lily, that's not true," he said. His words were shaky, trying to mask panic. "Rex saved you. We saved you." Lily's tiny finger trembled as it rose again. "No," he listened to him. "He didn't save us. He just watched." The courtroom erupted into whispers. The jurors scribbled rapidly. The mother buried her face in her hands, sobbing silently. The media's cameras clicked incessantly, capturing a story that was evolving by the second. Dana pressed on, her voice calm but insistent. "Lily, do you remember the barn? What happened there?" The child's breathing quickened. She closed her eyes and her small body shook. "They threw me into the dark place. Mommy was crying. I called for Rex, but he didn't come. The man told him to stay. Rex listened to the man. He didn't listen to me." Gasps, murmurs, a collective intake of air. Detective Hale's face paled. His jaw tightened and sweat ran down the side of his temple. This was the moment he had feared but had never expected. His carefully constructed public image, his hero story, the medals, the accolades, were all crumbling in the courtroom in the testimony of a child and the silent acknowledgement of a dog. Frank Donnelly tugged at the leash, voice raised. "Rex, sit, stay." But Rex didn't respond. Every officer in the courtroom recognized the significance. This was not defiance. This was memory, recognition, truth. Judge Hamilton's gavel struck once, but his voice trembled. "Order." Everyone remained calm. The child continued, trembling but resolute. "I remember his boots, the way he smelled like smoke and rain, the way he said I couldn't scream, I was scared. And Rex, he didn't save me. He followed him." The courtroom went utterly silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes you feel your own heartbeat echo. Dana Mitchell took a careful step closer to Lily, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily, can you tell us who the man was?" The girl's lips quivered, and for a moment she looked away, as if searching for the courage to speak. Then she raised her head, eyes clear and piercing despite her tears. He was the man who said he saved us," she whispered. "The man everyone cheered for, but he lied." Time seemed to freeze. Every journalist, officer, juror, and court official understood instantly who she meant. Detective Marcus Hale's face went ashen. His fingers twitched on the edge of the table. Years of planning, of scripting his hero narrative, of keeping every rescue under control, were unraveling in the span of one child's testimony. Rex growled softly, a deep, low rumble that vibrated through the courtroom floor. Not in anger, not in aggression, but in recognition. The dog's instincts, the ones trained, nurtured, and conditioned, were telling him that something was horribly wrong. Frank Donnelly's hands shook as he tried to regain control. "Rex, heel, sit." The dog's muscles twitched, resisting. Every experienced officer in the room understood the signal. This was beyond obedience. This was judgment. The mother whispered over and over, her voice breaking, "My baby, my baby." Lily's voice shook, but she continued. He said it would be fine if I was quiet. He said I'd be safe, but I wasn't safe. Mommy wasn't safe, and Rex, he just stayed with him." Dana Mitchell's voice was steady now, but her mind raced. She needed clarity, a chain of events. "Lily, when you were taken, what happened next?" The child's small hands gripped the edge of the witness stand. She swallowed hard. "We were in the dark place. I called for Rex. He looked at me, and then he went to the man. He listened to the man." The words hit harder than any gavel could. Every person in the room felt the weight of them. The story of the city's hero dog, the celebrated detective, the miraculous rescue, it had been a lie. Detective Hale's lips trembled. He had faced dangerous criminals, gunmen, and explosions. But he had never faced the truth in the raw, unfiltered way that Lily and Rex were delivering it now. The prosecutor, sensing the courtroom's fragile tension, asked the next question carefully. "Lily, do you know what the man did to you?" Lily's face crumpled. He hurt us, and Rex, he followed him, he didn't save us." The room was frozen in disbelief. Gasps, whispers, and the scratching of pens filled the air. Even the seasoned officers and lawyers felt the weight of a betrayal they couldn't have imagined. Frank Donnelly looked at Rex, fear and awe mingling in his eyes. The dog's unwavering focus on Detective Hale was a statement that could not be denied. The canine hero had chosen truth over loyalty to a human handler. Judge Hamilton leaned forward, his gavel suspended above the bench, not wanting to strike it in case the room erupted. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "It can't be." But it was. The city's most celebrated rescue, the headlines, the parades, the medals, was built on a lie. And the lie had just been exposed by the smallest, most unexpected witnesses, a 3-year-old girl and a dog who refused to lie. Rex's low growl rumbled again, almost a warning. Detective Hale's face drained further, sweat pooling on his temples. He shifted in his seat, but his composure was gone. Lily whispered, voice breaking, "He didn't save us, he just followed him." And for the first time, everyone realized the horrifying truth. The night they had believed was a story of heroism had been a story of betrayal. The courtroom didn't just hold its breath, it stopped. And outside the walls of the courtroom, the city would never see Rex the same way again. Because now, everyone knew the dog who had been a hero had witnessed something darker. And the question that hung over every head, heavy and silent, was, if Rex didn't save them, then who did? And what had Detective Hale really done that night? The courtroom had transformed into a chamber of revelation. Every pair of eyes, jurors, reporters, officers, even the judge, was fixed on Lily and Rex. A 3-year-old had upended the narrative that the city had celebrated for months, and a dog, trained to obey without question, had silently corroborated her account. Detective Marcus Hale sat frozen, jaw clenched, trying to convince himself that this was a nightmare that would pass. But every instinct told him it wouldn't. He had built his career on the rescue story. The media interviews, the public appearances, the medals, the parades, the cameras flashing as he held Lily in his arms like a triumphant father figure. Every moment, meticulously choreographed, now shredded in real time by the girl's unwavering testimony. Rex's eyes never left him. The dog stood alert, tense, and most damningly focused. Every muscle in his body was coiled, a living statement that the detective's carefully cultivated heroism was a lie. Frank Donnelly, the dog's handler, gripped the leash so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He had trained Rex for years, instilling obedience, loyalty, and discipline. But this obedience now seemed powerless against a memory that had been stored in the dog's instincts, the memory of that night. Dana Mitchell leaned closer to Lily, speaking softly, gently. "Lily, can you tell us what the man did next?" The little girl's lips trembled. Her hands clutched her stuffed bunny like a lifeline. He made Mommy stay quiet. He said if we screamed, he'd hurt us." Her voice broke, and for a moment the courtroom held its breath. And Rex, he listened. He didn't save us, he just stayed with him. The words sent a ripple through the room. Even the reporters, accustomed to sensationalism, went silent. The narrative of heroism they had rehearsed in their minds was evaporating before their eyes. Frank's voice shook as he commanded, "Rex, sit, heel." But the dog refused. Every trained officer in the room understood that this was no ordinary disobedience. This was recognition. This was memory. Rex was identifying the source of the trauma, the man responsible for the fear that Lily had endured. Detective Hale's face went pale. Sweat formed at his temples. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the table. He tried to speak to regain control. This is ridiculous. Rex, he's confused. Dogs can get mixed signals." But Rex's gaze did not waver. The dog's focus was unwavering, unrelenting, and directed entirely at Hale. Every officer in the courtroom knew what it meant. It was a signal that couldn't be faked, couldn't be misread. Rex was saying with his presence what Lily had just said with words. The detective had been at the center of the nightmare. The prosecutor's voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. "Detective Hale, were you with Lily and her mother the night they were taken?" Hale's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I was leading the rescue. I saved them. Everyone knows that." Dana stepped closer, voice firm now. "Lily just told us differently. She said you made sure Rex followed you instead of helping her, that you ordered him to stay with the man who hurt her. Is that true?" The courtroom erupted in a murmur. Gasps, whispers, the scratching of pens, all filled the space. Every person inside felt the shift. The story of heroism was collapsing. Lily's small voice cut through the chaos. "He said we couldn't scream. He said it would be okay if we were quiet. And Rex, he listened to him. He didn't save us. He just watched." For a heartbeat, the courtroom was frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Even Judge Hamilton, who prided himself on absolute control, looked as if the floor had opened beneath him. Then Frank Donnelly, the dog's handler, spoke. His voice shook with a mix of disbelief and fear. "Rex, he's never done this before. He knows. He remembers. Whatever happened that night, he knows." The jurors leaned forward, pens hovering over notes, hearts pounding. They realized the magnitude of what they were witnessing. A living, breathing, trained police dog confirming a horrifying reality that no adult dared speak aloud. The mother buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Her heart shattered as the child she had carried, protected, and loved was reliving trauma no 3-year-old should endure. And yet, the clarity in Lily's voice, the certainty in her finger pointing, left no room for doubt. Detective Hale's attempts to control the narrative faltered. He swallowed hard. This is a misunderstanding. Rex, he's just reacting to stress." But it wasn't stress. Every officer, every attorney, every member of the jury understood it. The dog's instincts were precise, unerring, and inescapable. Rex had been present, he had observed, and he remembered. Dana Mitchell's voice was calm, cutting through the tension. Detective Hale, did you order Rex to stay with the man who kidnapped Lily and her mother? Hale's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. His fingers dug into the edge of the table. The room was silent except for the soft whine of Rex, who had lowered his head slightly but continued to fix the detective with unblinking eyes. Lily, sensing the hesitation, spoke again. Her voice was small but firm. He knew the bad man. The words struck like a thunderclap. A hush fell. Even the reporters stopped typing. Even the judge, ever composed, leaned forward in disbelief. The courtroom understood in that moment. The narrative of rescue, of heroism, of medals and applause had been a lie. The detective had orchestrated a story, but the truth had survived. It had survived in the memory of a 3-year-old girl and in the instincts of a K-9 who had been trained to see, remember, and act. Frank Donnelly's hands shook as he tightened his grip on Rex's leash. I can't believe this," he murmured. The mother whispered almost to herself, my baby, my baby." Her tears flowed freely, but there was a note of relief in her voice, a small solace that at least the truth had come to light. Detective Hale's eyes darted around the room, realizing he was exposed. No more scripts, no more parades, no more staged photo ops. The city's hero dog had silently testified against him, and the child who had survived his manipulation had spoken the truth. Dana Mitchell turned to the judge, voice steady but full of gravity. "Your Honor, we have a witness whose testimony, combined with Rex's behavior, calls into question the integrity of the rescue operation and the actions of Detective Marcus Hale that night. The evidence must be examined." Judge Hamilton's gavel rose, then fell with authority, but his voice was quieter, more measured than usual. "We will proceed carefully. This testimony is unprecedented." Lily clutched her bunny tightly, eyes never leaving Rex. The dog's ears twitched, tail stiff, but he remained calm. He had done his duty. He had remembered. He had spoken. And now, the truth no one wanted to face was undeniable. Detective Hale sat frozen. The courtroom waited. And outside the walls of justice, the city had no idea that the so-called hero it had cheered for was now at the center of a revelation that would shake everything it thought it knew. The question lingered in the silent, tension-filled room. If the detective hadn't saved them, if Rex hadn't intervened as the public believed, then who truly controlled that night? And what had really happened in the dark barn that Lily had survived? The courtroom braced for an answer that no one could predict. The courtroom had grown unbearably tense, a heavy silence punctuated only by the soft whimpers of Lily and the occasional shuffle of papers from nervous reporters. Every eye was fixed on Rex, the German shepherd whose reputation as a hero now teetered on the edge of scandal. Frank Donnelly, the dog's handler, had never felt so helpless. He gripped the leash with both hands, knuckles white, jaw clenched. "Rex, heel, sit." His voice cracked under pressure. But the dog did not obey. He did not look to Frank. His gaze was locked entirely on Detective Marcus Hale. The room seemed to hold its breath as the German shepherd stood, muscles coiled, tail stiff, ears erect. This was not aggression. This was a silent judgment, a declaration that could not be denied. For everyone in the courtroom, it was as if time had slowed. The murmurs, the whispers, the scratching of pens all ceased. Every officer, lawyer, juror, and reporter instinctively understood the unspoken truth. Rex remembered. He had been there that night. He had seen the betrayal. He was choosing now to testify with his body, his instincts, and his unwavering focus. Detective Hale's face turned pale. He had faced gunfire, explosives, and armed criminals, but he had never faced a witness like this. A trained K-9 refusing to obey, pointing toward him in a courtroom packed with law enforcement, jurors, and media cameras. Panic flickered across his face, betraying the calm he had maintained in public for months. The prosecutor, Dana Mitchell, spoke softly, her voice almost drowned in the tension. "Detective Hale, do you see what Rex is doing?" Hale swallowed hard, his throat dry. He tried to speak, but no words came. He was acutely aware that every officer in the room, every seasoned professional, could read Rex's body language. This was not a dog acting out. This was a living witness confirming Lily's account. Lily, standing on her little stool to reach the microphone, pointed again. He did it. He listened to the bad man. Rex growled low, a warning that reverberated through the courtroom floor. Not a sound meant to intimidate, but a signal, a truth unspoken that everyone understood. The dog was corroborating her testimony, silently indicting the man who had been celebrated as a hero. Frank tugged at the leash again, stronger this time. Rex, sit, heel. Rex resisted, every muscle in his body tense, rigid, unwavering. Trained officers recognized the signs. The dog was not confused. He was identifying a threat, a man he had observed committing acts that violated every instinct in him. Rex had been conditioned for obedience, yet he chose truth over authority. The jury leaned forward as Dana stepped closer, voice firm. Detective Hale, explain Rex's behavior. He is pointing at you. Is that correct? Hale's lips moved, but no words came out. His fingers fidgeted, betraying a nervousness that no seasoned criminal would miss. The courtroom air seemed to tighten around him, every breath a reminder that the lie he had spun for months was unraveling. Lily's voice, small but clear, cut through the tension. He told Rex to stay. He didn't help us. He didn't save us. The mother sobbed quietly, trying to hold herself together, her hands shaking as she clutched her purse. She had been too scared to speak for months, too afraid that telling the truth would jeopardize her daughter. Now, with Lily standing courageously in the witness box, the truth was out. Rex took a slow, deliberate step toward the defense table, his eyes never leaving Hale. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The dog was making a choice, and the message was unmistakable. He remembered the orders. He remembered the betrayal. He remembered the night that no one had expected him to. Frank, realizing he had lost control of the situation, whispered under his breath, "No, no, this can't be happening." He knew the dog was speaking a language no one could misinterpret. Every officer in the room recognized it immediately. Rex was identifying the man who had been at the center of the trauma, not the one who had staged the heroics. Detective Hale tried to speak again. Rex is confused, he doesn't know. Rex growled, cutting him off in a way that made even the most hardened officer flinch. It was as if the dog's instincts had been honed not for obedience, but for justice. Lily's little hand shook as she clutched her stuffed bunny. He lied. He said he saved us, but he didn't. The courtroom erupted into murmurs and shocked whispers. Reporters scrambled to capture every moment, knowing that this story was no longer just a trial. It was a revelation. Dana Mitchell, sensing the momentum, pressed further. "Frank, is this unusual behavior for Rex?" Frank's voice trembled. "Never. He's trained to follow commands, to obey, to protect. But this isn't disobedience. He recognizes, he remembers. That man," his gaze darted to Hale, voice dropping. "He remembers him, and he knows." Judge Hamilton slammed his gavel. "Order." But even his voice shook slightly. The courtroom had become more than a place of law. It had become a chamber of revelation, with a 3-year-old and a K-9 speaking truths that no one dared admit aloud. Hale's hands gripped the table. His breathing was shallow, rapid. He had been celebrated as the city's hero, praised for bravery, awarded medals, and lauded in front of crowds. And now, in a courtroom full of witnesses and cameras, that facade was collapsing. Rex took another step forward, unyielding, deliberate. His stance was clear to anyone who understood K-9 behavior. He remembered the night. He recognized the perpetrator, and he refused to lie for the man who had trained him, the man who had built his career on deception. Lily's voice rose, trembling but firm. "He said it would be okay if we were quiet. He said we had to be quiet, and Rex, he listened to him." A collective shiver ran through the room. Even the reporters, accustomed to sensational stories, could feel the weight of the moment. This was no ordinary testimony. This was truth, unfiltered, raw, and undeniable. Dana Mitchell turned to Judge Hamilton. "Your Honor, Rex's behavior combined with Lily's testimony is direct evidence that the rescue story presented by Detective Hale is false. The dog's instincts, his recognition, confirm her account. This must be addressed immediately." Judge Hamilton nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "We will proceed, but I warn everyone the courtroom will maintain order. This is unprecedented." The mother clutched her daughter tightly, tears streaming down her face. My baby," she whispered repeatedly. Relief mixed with horror as the reality of what Lily had endured became undeniable. Detective Hale's eyes darted around the room. Every glance he made confirmed the same terrifying truth. The narrative he had carefully constructed, the story of his heroism, was unraveling before his eyes. And Rex, silent yet vocal in his own way, had become the most damning witness. Every officer, juror, and member of the public watching live knew it. The question now hanging over the courtroom, heavy and impossible to ignore, was: if the hero dog didn't save them, and the celebrated detective had orchestrated a lie, then who had been in control that night? And just as that question sank into every mind, Rex gave a low, rumbling growl, a sound that resonated with the truth of the night, the unspoken horror, and the justice that had been waiting patiently to be revealed. The courtroom waited. Every heartbeat was loud, every eye focused, every mind braced for the revelation that was coming next. Because the story of that night was far from over, the courtroom was suffocating with tension. Every gaze, from jurors to reporters, from the judge to the spectators, remained locked on the unlikely duo at the center. Lily Carter, 3 years old, trembling yet resolute, and Rex, the K-9 hero whose behavior was rewriting the narrative of that night. Frank Donnelly's hands shook as he tightened his grip on Rex's leash. He had trained this dog for years, drilled him with obedience, loyalty, and instinct. Rex had never defied him before. Never. And yet here he was, standing rigid, eyes locked on Detective Marcus Hale. "Rex," Frank barked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Sit, heel." Rex did not move, not an inch. His ears twitched, body coiled, tail stiff. Every officer in the room recognized the signals. This was recognition, not confusion. This was memory. This was truth. Frank swallowed hard. His voice quivered. I don't understand. He's never done this before. He's always obeyed." Detective Hale's knuckles were white as he gripped the table. For months he had curated his hero image, staged the perfect rescue, and crafted public adoration. And now, all of it was collapsing, piece by piece, in the presence of a child and a dog. The judge cleared his throat, voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Officer Donnelly, explain your dog's behavior." Frank's head lowered, voice barely audible. "Your Honor, Rex, he's trained to obey commands. He's trained to protect. He's trained to follow me and only me." But he swallowed hard, eyes flicking to Rex and then back to Hale. "But he's recognizing something wrong. I think he's identifying the man responsible for what happened to Lily and her mother." Gasps erupted in the courtroom. The jurors leaned forward, pens frozen over paper. Reporters scribbled frantically. Even the judge's gavel, raised mid-command, trembled in his hand as he digested the magnitude of the statement. Lily looked at Rex, holding her stuffed bunny tightly. Her small face was streaked with tears, but her voice was unwavering. "He lied," she whispered. "He said he saved us, but he didn't." Frank's eyes brimmed with sweat and disbelief. I've seen him respond to thousands of situations. Never like this. He knows, he remembers." Detective Hale tried to speak, to regain control, but the words faltered. His public persona of courage and calm had no purchase here, not against a child's recollection, not against a dog's instinctual truth. This is absurd," he stammered. "Rex, he's just reacting to stress, confusion." But no one believed him. Not the jury, not the prosecutor, not the officers who had trained and worked with Rex for years. They all recognized the unmistakable signals: recognition, memory, and silent accusation. Dana Mitchell, sensing the room's readiness for the truth, pressed harder. "Frank, what exactly happened that night? What do you remember seeing Rex do?" Frank's breath caught. The memories were coming back, unbidden and unavoidable. It was dark at the barn the night Lily and her mother were taken. We arrived expecting a straightforward rescue, but Rex hesitated at the edge of the barn, ears back, low growl. He didn't respond to my commands. I pulled him forward, and then I saw him. His voice broke. He didn't run to the girl. He ran to Marcus Hale, stayed at his side. He recognized him. I couldn't believe it. I tried to take control, but... Frank's words faltered into silence, leaving the courtroom suspended in disbelief. The seasoned law enforcement officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The magnitude of the revelation was staggering. Dana Mitchell's voice softened, urging, "Frank, what do you mean he recognized him?" Frank swallowed, tears forming. "Rex never disobeys, never hesitates, but that night he hesitated. He didn't save Lily, he didn't protect her mother, he stayed with Marcus. He remembered him, he knew what Marcus was capable of. He followed his orders instead of saving them." The courtroom erupted into whispers and gasps. The weight of the truth hung heavily in the air. Detective Hale's face drained of color. He tried to deny it, tried to argue, but even his own instincts betrayed him. Rex let out a low, guttural growl, not threatening, not aggressive, but warning, a statement of fact. He was confirming what Frank had said, what Lily had remembered, what the jury now understood. The K-9 wasn't just a witness. He was a participant in the truth. Lily's mother sobbed quietly, gripping her daughter's hand. My baby," she whispered repeatedly, her voice shaking. The judge leaned forward, his gavel hovering over the desk. "Detective Hale, you have a chance to respond. Do you deny Officer Donnelly's statements? Do you deny that Rex acted in recognition of you during the rescue?" Hale's lips quivered. He shook his head, sweat dripping from his brow. It wasn't like that. I saved them. I was trying to." His voice faltered, then disappeared into silence. Frank's hands were shaking so badly he had to steady Rex with both hands. "Your Honor, Rex never lies. He never misidentifies. He remembers everything. He was with Marcus the whole time. He didn't rescue them. He watched them suffer." The prosecutor's voice was calm but firm. "So, Frank, you're saying that the official narrative, the rescue, the heroism, the medals, was fabricated?" Frank nodded slowly, swallowing back a sob. "Yes, Rex, he remembers everything. He's telling us what really happened. Marcus, he used the story of a rescue to cover up what really happened in the barn." The room was silent. Every person understood the implications. The city's celebrated hero, the decorated detective, had been exposed. Not by surveillance, not by fingerprints, not by evidence that could be manipulated, but by a child's memory and a dog's instinct. Judge Hamilton's gavel finally fell with a sharp bang. "Order, we will proceed, but everyone will remain seated. The testimony so far has confirmed what appears to be a serious breach of duty and potential criminal actions. This court will take this matter under advisement as evidence continues." Lily looked at Rex, who lowered his head slightly, tail still stiff, eyes unwavering. She pressed her small hand against his fur. He leaned into her gently, as if to reassure her that she had done the bravest thing possible. She had spoken the truth. Detective Hale sat frozen, staring at the floor. The narrative he had built, parades, accolades, cameras flashing, was gone, shattered, exposed. Outside the courtroom, the city would soon see the story unfold. The hero dog, Rex, had spoken through actions, instincts, and loyalty. The little girl, Lily, had spoken through words, and Detective Marcus Hale's secrets were no longer hidden. Frank Donnelly whispered under his breath, shaking his head. I can't believe it. I trained him, I trusted him, and he remembered." The prosecutor's gaze hardened. This is just the beginning. There are questions that need answers, and Rex and Lily, they're giving us the truth we need. The courtroom waited, collectively holding its breath. The revelation had only just begun. Because now, the lie that had held for months was cracking, and the full story of what truly happened that night was about to be exposed. The question hanging over everyone's head was sharp, chilling, undeniable. If Rex knew the truth, if Lily remembered the terror, then what else had Detective Hale hidden? And with that, the room braced itself for the next revelation, one that would shock the city to its core. The courtroom had transformed into a stage of revelation, a theater where every word, every gesture, and every instinct spoke louder than the law books or public opinion. The audience, jurors, reporters, officers, and spectators alike, sat frozen as Lily, 3 years old, clutched her stuffed bunny while Rex stood beside her, rigid, eyes locked on Detective Marcus Hale. For months, the city had celebrated Hale as a hero. News headlines had immortalized him. Detective saves missing child in daring K-9 rescue. Medals had been awarded. Public appearances had been applauded. Cameras had flashed as he held Lily in his arms like a triumphant father figure. And yet, now, every facade he had constructed was crumbling. Frank Donnelly, the dog's handler, stepped forward slowly, voice trembling. "Your Honor, the dog Rex, he remembers everything. That night, he didn't act on my commands. He didn't rescue Lily. He stayed with Marcus Hale. He obeyed him instead of saving her." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Every officer, juror, and reporter understood the implications. This wasn't disobedience. It was memory. It was truth. It was silent testimony against the man once celebrated as a hero. Lily's voice, small yet unwavering, cut through the tension. "He lied," she whispered. "He said he saved us, but he didn't." The judge's gavel struck sharply, trying to restore order. Everyone remained seated. "This testimony is unprecedented, but we will continue." Dana Mitchell, the prosecutor, moved closer to the child, her voice calm but piercing. "Lily, can you tell us everything that happened at the barn?" The girl's tiny hands shook as she gripped her bunny. It was dark. The bad man, he had boots that went clomp, clomp, clomp. He said we couldn't scream. He said he'd hurt Mommy if I did. Her lips quivered. "I called for Rex, but he listened to the man. He didn't come to help. He stayed with him." The courtroom gasped. Every reporter scribbled furiously. Even Judge Hamilton's hands tightened on the bench. Frank Donnelly stepped forward, voice breaking. "Your Honor, Rex has never done this before. He's trained for obedience, for protection. But that night, he hesitated. Then he obeyed Marcus Hale. I tried to pull him away. I couldn't, he knew." Detective Hale's jaw tightened. He tried to speak to maintain his composure, but his words faltered. This is absurd. Rex, he's confused." Rex growled low, a deep rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't defiance. It was recognition, the canine equivalent of testimony. Dana pressed on. "Frank, what exactly did Rex do when you arrived at the barn?" Frank swallowed hard. "We got to the barn. I expected him to lead me to Lily, but he froze. Then he went straight to Marcus. He stayed with him. I couldn't get him to follow the rescue plan. He remembered Marcus. He knew what Marcus had done." The courtroom went still. Hale's face was ashen, sweat running down his temple. The medals, the media, the public praise, they had all been built on a lie. Lily's mother sobbed quietly. My baby," her voice shook with relief and horror. Dana Mitchell asked gently, "Lily, did Marcus hurt you?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. He hurt us. He said it would be okay if we were quiet, and Rex, he listened to him." The jurors leaned forward. Reporters clicked cameras incessantly. Every person in the room felt the weight of what was being revealed. Judge Hamilton finally spoke, voice heavy. Detective Hale, you may respond." Hale's lips trembled. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Sweat poured down his face. He had been celebrated as a hero, but the truth was unraveling faster than he could control. Frank Donnelly's voice trembled as he added, "Your Honor, Rex never lies, he never misidentifies, he remembers everything. Marcus Hale, he knew what he was doing that night. And Rex, he didn't intervene because Marcus gave the orders." The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. The implications were staggering. The city's celebrated hero had been exposed, not by cameras, not by eyewitness reports, not by evidence that could be manipulated, but by a child's recollection and a dog's instincts. Dana Mitchell's voice cut through the chaos. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Rex's behavior, Lily's testimony, and Frank Donnelly's account show that the official story is false. Detective Hale's actions during the rescue were not heroic, they were complicit. The victim's testimony is corroborated by a witness no one could ignore." The jurors scribbled rapidly, their pens trembling. The reporters' cameras clicked furiously. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Rex stepped closer to Hale, low growl rumbling through his chest. Every officer present understood. This was recognition, instinct, memory. The dog was identifying the man responsible for what happened that night. Lily reached out, touching Rex's fur gently. "He knows," she whispered. Hale's hands clenched into fists. He was trapped, exposed. Every instinct told him to deny, to lie, to spin a story. But even he knew it was too late. Rex and Lily had spoken the truth louder than any press release, any medal, any staged rescue could ever do. Frank Donnelly swallowed hard, his hands shaking. "Your Honor, Rex was there. He saw everything, he remembers. And now the city will know the truth." Judge Hamilton leaned forward, gavel raised. "This court recognizes the gravity of the situation. We will proceed with further investigation into Detective Marcus Hale's actions. The testimony presented is unprecedented, but it cannot be ignored." The mother held Lily close. Tears streamed down her face, a mix of relief, sorrow, and anger. Her daughter had survived the night's terror, and now her truth was finally being heard. Detective Hale slumped in his chair. The facade of heroism, the medals, the public praise, they were all gone. In their place was the cold, unyielding reality. He had been exposed. Rex growled softly again, almost as if emphasizing the verdict of instinct. The dog had remembered. He had chosen truth over obedience. He had witnessed everything, and no human manipulation could change it. The courtroom waited. Every heart raced. Every breath was held. Every mind braced for the consequences. Because the story was far from over. The question lingering in the air, heavy and undeniable, was: if the city's hero had been exposed as a liar, if the rescue had been orchestrated for appearances, then what had really happened in that dark barn? And no one, neither the jury, the reporters, nor Detective Hale, would be prepared for the answer. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes every heartbeat feel deafening. Every eye was locked on Lily, her tiny hands clutching her stuffed bunny, and Rex, the German shepherd whose gaze never wavered from Detective Marcus Hale. For months, the city had believed a story of heroism. Now the truth, unvarnished, raw, and undeniable, was laid bare. Judge Hamilton leaned forward, voice measured but heavy. "We have heard testimony that challenges everything we believed about the so-called rescue. Detective Hale, you will be asked to answer for your actions. The court recognizes the K-9's behavior as corroborating witness testimony. Your public image is not the law. The law is truth, and the truth will prevail." Detective Hale's hands shook. He had faced criminals, armed suspects, and dangerous missions, but none of it compared to this moment. He was trapped. The facade of medals, press conferences, and staged rescues had evaporated in the courtroom under the unblinking eyes of a 3-year-old and a dog trained to never lie. Rex growled low, a deep, steady sound that vibrated through the courtroom. This was no threat. This was confirmation. He remembered the night. He recognized the danger. He was silent testimony incarnate, unwavering and undeniable. Dana Mitchell, the prosecutor, stepped closer to Lily. "Lily, can you tell the court what really happened that night?" The little girl inhaled sharply, her voice trembling but resolute. "The dark barn, the bad man, he said I couldn't scream. He said he'd hurt Mommy if I did. And Marcus, he said it would be okay if I stayed quiet. And Rex, he listened to him. He didn't save us. He just stayed with him." The courtroom gasped. Even the reporters, hardened by years of covering dramatic trials, paused to absorb the weight of what she had said. The jurors leaned forward, pens frozen. Even Judge Hamilton's hands tightened on the bench. Frank Donnelly's hands shook as he gripped Rex's leash. "Your Honor, Rex has never done this before. He's trained to obey, to follow commands, to protect. But that night, he chose to follow Marcus Hale instead of saving Lily and her mother. He remembered. He knew." Hale's lips trembled. He tried to speak, tried to reclaim the narrative, but every instinct betrayed him. The public hero, the decorated detective, had been unmasked by a child and a dog. Dana's voice was calm but sharp. "Frank, when you arrived at the barn that night, what did you see Rex do?" Frank swallowed hard. "He froze at the edge of the barn. He didn't follow me. He didn't go to Lily. Then he went to Marcus Hale and stayed by his side. He recognized him. He knew what Marcus had done. I tried to control him. I couldn't. He remembered everything." The courtroom murmured, shock rippling through every corner. The truth was undeniable. The city's hero had been exposed, not by video, not by fingerprints, but by instinct and memory. Judge Hamilton's gavel fell once sharply. "Detective Hale, you are hereby ordered to remain seated. Further investigation into your actions that night will proceed immediately. This court recognizes that witnesses, both human and canine, have presented evidence that cannot be ignored." The mother held her daughter tightly, sobbing, relief mixed with horror. Her child had survived unimaginable terror, and now, at last, the truth had been acknowledged. Rex lowered his head slightly, still tense, still alert, but his eyes softened as Lily pressed her small hand against his fur. The bond between them was unspoken but profound. He had been her silent guardian in ways no one had understood. He had witnessed, he had remembered, and he had confirmed the truth. Outside the courtroom, the city had already begun to react. Social media buzzed with disbelief. "Hero detective exposed. K9 reveals truth in court. 3-year-old uncovers police cover-up." News anchors struggled to keep up with the revelation, replaying footage of Rex in the courtroom, unflinching, unwavering, a silent witness to betrayal. Frank Donnelly finally exhaled, a shaky but honest release of the tension he had carried for months. He's never done that before. He's always obeyed, but he remembered. He chose truth. Lily's mother whispered repeatedly, my baby." Her voice carried grief, relief, and pride. Her daughter had survived. Her daughter had spoken, and together with Rex, she had revealed what no one else could. Detective Hale remained pale, sweat dripping from his brow, the reality of exposure settling on him like a weight he could not escape. The city's accolades, the media praise, the parades, all meaningless now. The truth had unmasked him, and the law would follow. Dana Mitchell turned to Judge Hamilton. "Your Honor, the combined testimony of Lily Carter and Rex, corroborated by Officer Donnelly, represents incontrovertible evidence of misconduct and deception. The city must know the full extent of Detective Hale's actions." Judge Hamilton nodded slowly. "The court acknowledges the gravity of this case. Further investigation will determine the full consequences. But today, truth has been revealed. The brave actions of a child and a K9 have exposed what had long been hidden." Rex nudged Lily gently with his nose, a gesture of comfort and protection. The little girl hugged him tightly, her tiny arms wrapping around the dog that had silently stood for justice. She had survived the dark night, faced the man who had betrayed her, and now, through courage and innocence, had ensured that the truth was heard. Frank Donnelly whispered softly to the dog, a mixture of awe and relief in his voice. "You remembered, boy, you remembered everything. You did the right thing." The courtroom was still tense, but the weight had shifted. The lie that had held for months had been shattered. The truth had been revealed, and justice, though still in motion, had begun to take shape. Outside, the city would never see Rex or Lily the same way again. The story of heroism had been rewritten. The dog who had been silent, loyal, and brave was now the city's unspoken champion. The little girl who had endured terror and trauma had become its voice. Detective Marcus Hale, stripped of his facade, would face the consequences of his actions. The medals, the parades, the press coverage, they were meaningless in the face of truth. And in that courtroom on that day, the unlikely heroes, a 3-year-old girl and a German shepherd, had changed the story forever. Rex's low growl rumbled one final time, a statement not of aggression but of judgment. The innocent had spoken, the guilty had been exposed, and the city had witnessed a truth no one could deny. Lily whispered into his fur, barely audible, "Thank you, Rex. You saved us in your own way." And for the first time since that dark night, the little girl, the mother, and the dog felt the weight of survival, courage, and the unbreakable bond that had carried them through the nightmare. The courtroom exhaled collectively, the tension giving way to awe, disbelief, and relief. The story of betrayal and courage had reached its climax, and the city, though shaken, now knew the real heroes. The end.